Something was wrong. Not loud, not chaotic. Wrong in a way that made 50 hardened inmates suddenly forget how to breathe. A man the size of a truck lay flat on the concrete, unconscious, eyes half open, jaw twisted at an unnatural angle. And nobody moved. Warden Morrison stepped into the yard, stopped mid-stride, and for the first time in 10 years of running this prison, he felt it. That cold, creeping question. How does a man like that just drop? "What the hell happened here?" he demanded, but the silence that answered him was heavier than any riot. Because 5 minutes earlier, that same man, Darius Cole, had been standing, smiling, promising to break Mike Tyson in front of everyone. Now he wasn't even breathing properly. And Mike? Mike was standing 10 feet away, calm, hands loose, like nothing had happened. That was the moment the story began, but the truth started earlier. Tuesday afternoon, 1993, Indiana Youth Center. The yard looked like every other day, and that's what made it dangerous. Men walked in circles, weights clanged. A basketball hit concrete in slow, hollow echoes. Guards watched from towers, bored but alert. Everything normal, except one thing. Mike Tyson was moving. Near the fence, under the shadow of razor wire, he shadowboxed, not for show, not for anyone watching, but like a man sharpening a weapon no one else could see. Short breaths, sharp pivots, hands snapping forward and retracting before the eye could fully track them. Every movement controlled, every inch calculated. And the strange part, nobody went near him, not because he threatened them, not because he acted tough, but because something about him felt contained, like pressure sealed inside steel. You didn't test that kind of silence, not if you understood survival. Most inmates did. Darius Cole didn't. He had arrived 3 months earlier, and from day one, he treated the prison like a stage. Loud, aggressive, always pushing. 6'4", 250 pounds, built like punishment itself. Arms thick as cables, neck like concrete, and behind him, always, a few shadows. Men who laughed when he laughed, moved when he moved, fed off his need to dominate. Darius had heard about Tyson. Everyone had. But in his mind, that meant nothing. Outside titles didn't matter here. Belts didn't matter. Fame didn't matter. In here, there was only one rule: prove it or lose it. And Darius believed he was built to prove it. Then he saw him, Mike, alone, focused, quiet, not performing, not trying, just working. Something about that bothered Darius more than any insult could, because Mike wasn't looking for attention, and men like Darius lived for attention. So he smiled, slow, dangerous, the kind of smile that doesn't come from humor. It comes from decision. "Let's see what you really are," he muttered, already moving. His crew followed without question. Across the yard, the shift began. One man stopped mid-rep. Another turned away from the game. Conversations died mid-sentence. The air tightened. People didn't rush in. They drifted, slowly, instinctively, forming a loose circle like gravity was pulling them towards something inevitable. Mike saw them. Of course he did. But he didn't stop. His hands kept moving. Jab, slip, hook, step, breathe. As if the approaching storm didn't exist. That was the second mistake. Because to Darius, silence meant fear, and fear meant opportunity. He stopped 10 feet away, crossed his arms, and looked Mike up and down like a hunter sizing prey. "Yo, shorty," he called out, loud enough for the entire yard to hear. "You think you're tough?" No response, just movement, clean, precise, untouched. A ripple moved through the circle. Some men already knew how this would end. Others leaned in, waiting for the spark. Darius stepped closer. "I'm talking to you, Tyson." Louder now, sharper. "Or you only fight when there's cameras watching." Still nothing. Just that same rhythm, that same control, that same refusal to engage. And that was what broke something inside Darius. Because now it wasn't about proving strength. Now it was about not being ignored. He closed the distance again, 5 feet, close enough to see the detail, the calm, the lack of fear. "What's wrong?" Darius smirked, tilting his head. "You scared? You know I'm bigger. You know I'd crush you in a real fight." Mike stopped. Not fast, not dramatic, just stopped. Then he turned, slowly, and when his eyes locked onto Darius, something shifted in the air, subtle but real, like the moment before lightning hits. "I don't want trouble," Mike said quietly. "No anger, no ego, just fact. I'm doing my time. You should do yours." For a split second, the yard held its breath. That was the exit, the only exit. Walk away and nothing happens. But Darius didn't hear opportunity. He heard weakness, and that was his final mistake. He laughed, loud, mocking, turning to the crowd like he already owned the moment. "You hear that?" he said, spreading his arms. "The legend don't want trouble." A few nervous chuckles. No one committed. Because deep down, they weren't sure this was going the way Darius thought. He stepped even closer now, close enough to touch, close enough to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Nah," he said, voice dropping, eyes hardening. "I think you just don't want people to see what happens when you fight someone bigger." Mike didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't respond. But something inside him tightened. Old training, old discipline, old warnings echoing in silence. Control it, unless you have no choice. The yard could feel it now. That pressure, that invisible line seconds away from breaking. And then Darius reached out and shoved him. The moment Darius's hand hit Mike's chest, something invisible snapped, like a wire pulled too tight finally giving way. For a fraction of a second, nothing moved. Not the guards in the towers, not the inmates in the circle. Even the air felt frozen. Then it happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just fast. Too fast. Mike's right hand moved, but most people didn't see it, they only heard it. A sharp, dry crack that cut through the yard like a gunshot without smoke. Darius's head snapped sideways, his smirk still half-formed, his eyes losing focus before his brain could understand what had just happened. His body hesitated, like it was waiting for instructions that would never come. Then gravity took over. 250 pounds of muscle folded and dropped, hard. The sound of his body hitting concrete wasn't just heavy, it was final. No stumble, no second chance, just impact. Silence exploded across the yard. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the basketball stopped bouncing somewhere in the distance. For a few seconds, the entire prison forgot how to exist. Because what they had just witnessed didn't make sense. A man bigger, stronger, louder, gone. In one motion, one decision, one strike. Mike stood there, still, fists loose again, breathing steady. Not proud, not angry, just finished. He looked down at Darius for a moment, eyes calm, almost indifferent, then slowly lifted his gaze to the circle around him. And that's when the real tension began. Because now every man there understood something they hadn't fully believed before. This wasn't reputation, this was reality. Anyone else? Mike's voice was quiet, but it carried like pressure through the silence. No shouting, no challenge. Just a question that didn't need to be repeated. And nobody answered, not one. Even Darius's crew, the same men who had walked behind him minutes ago like shadows, took a step back. Hands slightly raised, eyes lowered. Their confidence gone, replaced by something far more honest, survival instinct. One of them swallowed hard. Another shook his head slightly without realizing it. Nobody wanted to be next. Nobody even wanted to be noticed. Mike held their eyes for a second longer, just enough to make sure the message wasn't misunderstood. Then he turned away. Just like that. No celebration, no speech. He went back to shadowboxing. Same rhythm, same movement, as if nothing had happened. As if a giant wasn't lying unconscious 10 feet away. And somehow, that made it worse. Because violence you can understand, rage you can prepare for, but calm after destruction, that's what stays in your head. That's what changes the way you look at a man forever. The yard didn't relax, it collapsed into silence. No one dared break it. Until the whistles came. Sharp, urgent, guards shouting. Boots hitting concrete from every direction. Radios crackling with overlapping commands. The system had finally caught up to what had already ended. Within seconds, guards surrounded the scene, batons ready, eyes scanning for chaos that wasn't there. Because there was no fight, no riot, just one man down, and one man untouched. Then Warden Morrison arrived. Fast, controlled, experienced. A man who had seen fights, stabbings, riots, things that would make most people quit on the spot. He pushed through the crowd, expecting noise, resistance, something. But what he found stopped him cold. Darius Cole, flat on his back, not moving. His chest rising slowly, unevenly, his jaw already swelling. And around him, silence. Total. Morrison's eyes moved, from Darius to the circle of inmates, then finally to Mike Tyson. Mike stood near the fence again, moving lightly, throwing short combinations into empty air like he had all the time in the world. No panic, no urgency, just control. Morrison felt it immediately. This wasn't chaos, this was something else. Something precise. Something finished before anyone realized it started. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded, voice cutting through the yard. No answer. Not even a whisper. Men looked at the ground, at the walls, anywhere but him. That silence wasn't confusion, it was a decision, and Morrison knew it. "I asked a question." He stepped forward, voice sharper now, authority pressing down. "Someone better start talking." Still nothing. Just the wind and the faint sound of Mike's feet shifting on concrete behind him. Morrison's jaw tightened. He had seen fear before. He had seen loyalty. But this was different. This was dozens of men choosing the same lie, without saying a word. And he hadn't even heard it yet. He turned slowly and faced Mike. Their eyes met. Calm versus suspicion. Control versus experience. And for a brief second, neither man spoke. Because both of them already knew exactly what had happened. The silence didn't break. It hardened. Warden Morrison stepped closer, eyes locked on Mike, searching for the crack that would give the truth away. "Tyson," he said quietly, controlled. "A word." Mike stopped, turned, walked over like this was just another routine check. No tension in his shoulders, no rush in his steps. That calm again. The same calm that made the entire yard feel smaller. Morrison lowered his voice. "I know what happened," he said. "I know you hit him." A pause. A test. Mike didn't blink. "He tripped," Mike answered evenly. Not defensive, not aggressive, just simple. Morrison studied him, then looked past him, at the inmates still standing in that unbroken circle of silence. "Is that what happened?" He raised his voice. 1 second, 2, then a nod. "Yeah, Warden, he was running." Another voice, quick, careful. "Lost his balance." A third, "Hit the ground hard." The lie spread instantly, perfectly, like it had been rehearsed for years. Morrison felt it. Not confusion, not doubt. Certainty. They had all chosen the same version, not because they loved Mike, not because they feared punishment, but because they had seen something and decided it was smarter to bury it. Morrison exhaled slowly, eyes drifting back to Darius being lifted onto a stretcher, his massive frame suddenly looking fragile. "Clear the yard," he ordered. "Now." No resistance, no delay. Men moved immediately, quiet, focused, each one careful not to draw attention. As they passed Mike, some gave the smallest nod, not respect like admiration, but respect like understanding. Line crossed. Lesson learned. Within minutes, the yard emptied. Only Morrison, a few guards, and the echo of what had happened remained. He looked at Mike one last time. "You're either the luckiest man in here," he said slowly, "or the smartest." Mike gave a small shrug. "I'm just doing my time." Morrison almost smiled, but didn't, because he knew better. Later that night, the story spread. It changed. It grew. Some said Mike dropped him with one punch. Others said it was 3. A few claimed there were more men involved. But the truth? The truth stayed locked in that yard, carried only by those who saw it, and chose silence. Darius woke up hours later, jaw fractured, memory broken. He tried to speak, tried to explain, but without proof, without witnesses, his words meant nothing. And when he returned to the yard days later, something had changed. Not just in him, but in everyone. He didn't look at Mike, not once. Because now he understood what the others already knew. Size wasn't power. Noise wasn't power. Real power didn't need to prove itself twice. Mike went back to his routine. Same corner, same movements, same silence. But from that day on, nobody stepped into his space again. Not because they were told not to, not because of rules, but because they had seen what happens when a man who avoids conflict finally decides not to. And in a place where survival depends on reading danger correctly, that lesson spread faster than fear. It became law.